The night it all began, I thought I had everything a man could want, a steady job, a loving wife, and a future that felt certain. But sometimes life throws you into storms you never see coming, and mine arrived the moment I learned that the woman I loved had not only betrayed me, my boss, a man who presented himself as a mentor and guide in my career, became the thief of my marriage, the person who offered Emily the fantasy of wealth and luxury. But what happens when the fantasy crumbles and the truth shows itself in its raw, painful form? As I sat in silence that night, staring at the empty side of the bed where she once slept, I realized that some stories don't just end with heartbreak, they evolve into lessons that change who we are at the very core. This is not just a story about betrayal, it's about what comes after. What happens when someone trades loyalty for luxury, only to discover that love built on lies has no foundation? Can a broken marriage ever heal? Can a man rebuild his strength after being left for someone more powerful? I want you to walk with me through this journey. Imagine being in my shoes, the woman you vowed to spend forever with suddenly deciding her forever is better spent elsewhere. Would you fight to win her back? Would you let anger consume you? Or would you choose to rise above and write a new chapter for yourself? This story is about choices, consequences, and the unexpected turns that follow. And while Emily thought she had walked away into a brighter future, what she didn't know was that the very thing she chased would be the reason she lost everything she ever had. Stay with me until the end, because the twist in this story will leave you questioning what true happiness really means. Speech balloon, tell me in the comments, what would you do if you were betrayed not just by your partner, but by the very person you trusted with your career? Would forgiveness ever be possible, or is betrayal the line that should never be crossed? The days after Emily left felt like walking through a fog. Everything around me looked familiar, yet nothing felt the same. Our home, once filled with laughter, had turned into a place of silence. Her perfume still lingered, and my boss, Richard, had all of it in abundance. With his tailored suits, his confident smile, and his effortless wealth, he offered her what I could not, a shortcut to the life she thought she deserved. But what Emily didn't realize was that wealth built without love often leaves a person emptier than they started. I still remember the first time I suspected something. She came home late, her phone tucked tightly in her hand, her smile forced as she told me she had been out with. I kept asking myself, if she came back tomorrow, could I forgive her? Or was the damage too deep to ever repair? These questions haunted me in every quiet moment, leaving me restless and searching for answers. And while Emily walked into Richard's world of power and glamour, neither of them could see the storm that was about to unfold, one that would strip away their illusions and reveal the truth neither of them expected. Emily's new life with Richard seemed perfect on the surface. Expensive dinners in glittering restaurants, weekend getaways to private resorts, gifts wrapped in velvet boxes, she had stepped into the luxury lifestyle she once only dreamed about. But behind those moments of wealth and glamour, cracks began to form. Richard was powerful, but with friends and neighbors whispered, some with pity, others with curiosity, as if waiting to see how long I would last before breaking. I thought about confronting him, but part of me hesitated. Was it pride that kept me silent, or was it the faint hope that Emily might see through the illusion herself? The emotional distance between us grew wider, yet fate seemed determined to keep pulling us back into each other's orbit. Emily would pass by our old neighborhood, her eyes lingering on the house we once shared. And in those fleeting glances, I wondered if she missed the warmth of home, the laughter we had built together, and the love that once felt unshakable. The conflict deepened not just between husband and wife, but also within Emily herself. She wanted the security of wealth, but the emptiness of a loveless romance gnawed at her. She wanted freedom, yet Richard's world offered anything but. Viewers, what would you do in Emily's place? Choose a life of comfort built on lies, or return to a love that had been scarred by betrayal? And just when it seemed the tension couldn't rise any higher, fate prepared a twist neither of us could predict, something that would test loyalty, forgiveness, and the true meaning of desire. Emily stood in the middle of Richard's penthouse, the city lights flickering behind her like stars that refused to fade. Everything looked perfect, the sparkling glasses on the table, the polished marble floors, the scent of expensive wine lingering in the air. Yet her chest tightened as if she were trapped in a cage built of gold. Richard's voice echoed in the background, commanding, sharp, and full of authority as he spoke on the phone. She caught only fragments of the conversation, words like loss, deal, and consequences. It was enough to chill her blood. The man she thought would protect her was not just powerful, he was dangerous. On my side, sleepless nights became routine. I couldn't erase the image. That fear kept me restless, wondering if I should step in, wondering if saving her would even be possible, or if she had already chosen her path too far. The tension thickened when whispers about Richard's empire began spilling into the office. Colleagues talked cautiously, afraid to speak too loud, but the pattern was there: failing deals, mounting debts, enemies closing in. Emily, unknowingly, was becoming entangled in all of it. And the more I noticed, the more I realized the danger wasn't just to her heart, it was to her safety. Emily began to sense it too. She started avoiding his gaze during dinners, keeping her phone hidden, sometimes even glancing back over her shoulder as though someone was following her. Every step she took seemed heavy, every word calculated. And deep down, I could feel she was reaching a breaking point, though she hadn't admitted it yet. The story had moved far beyond betrayal now, it was about survival. The walls of Richard's empire were closing in, and Emily was caught in the center of it. The suspense was unbearable. Would she escape before it was too late? Would she risk everything to come back to the love she once knew, or would she be crushed under the weight of her choices? Viewers, what do you think? If you were in Emily's shoes, would you walk away from power and risk losing everything, or stay and face the storm? The climax is coming, and the next decision will decide it all. The night Emily decided to confront her fears, she uncovered something that shifted everything. While Richard was away on yet another late meeting, she quietly searched through his study, her hands trembling as she opened drawer after drawer. At first, all she found were business files and contracts, but then one folder caught her eye. Inside were photographs, receipts, and notes about people she recognized from Richard's world. Some were allies, others competitors, but the shocking part was a single page with her name written boldly across the top. Beneath it were details about her life, her routines, even her conversations. It felt less like love and more like surveillance, as if she were a project Richard controlled, not a woman he cared for. Meanwhile, I received a message that turned my own world upside down. A colleague slipped me a file connected to Richard's financial dealings, and buried inside was proof that Emily was unknowingly tied to one of his riskiest investments. If his empire collapsed, she would lose everything: her reputation, her home, even the small savings she thought were hers. This wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was entrapment. Emily's heart raced when Richard came home earlier than expected. She quickly closed the drawer, trying to mask her unease, but his sharp eyes noticed the slight movement in her posture. He smiled, but it wasn't the smile of a man in love, it was the calculated grin of someone who knew he was holding all the cards. She felt trapped in that penthouse, surrounded by wealth and luxury, yet emptier than she had ever been. For me, the urgency grew unbearable. I knew if I didn't act soon, Emily might become more than a casualty of heartbreak, she could be swallowed by Richard's collapsing empire. But what if she didn't want saving? What if the comfort of riches still outweighed the pain of lies? The stakes were no longer just about love or betrayal. This was about survival, power, and the hidden cost of desire. The story was shifting, and every step forward carried the weight of danger. Viewers, what do you think? Should Emily risk exposing Richard and lose the wealth that ties her to him, or keep silent and gamble with her heart and safety? Emily's hands shook as she held the folder tighter, her heart thundering in her chest. Richard stepped closer, his calm but piercing eyes never leaving hers. "You've been looking where you shouldn't," he said softly, though his voice carried a sharp edge. She swallowed hard, refusing to back down. For the first time, she felt she had nothing to lose. With steady courage, she laid the papers flat on the desk, her voice breaking but strong. "You weren't just lying to me, Richard. You were using me. Every part of my life has been recorded, controlled, manipulated." "Why?" For a moment, the silence was suffocating. Then Richard's facade cracked. He confessed that the empire he built was fragile, patched together with risky deals and hidden debts. Marrying Emily hadn't been about love, it had been about securing trust and influence through her family's reputation. What he hadn't expected, however, was to actually care for her over time. His words, though desperate, only deepened the cut. She realized the man she had trusted was both her husband and her greatest enemy. Just when the tension seemed unbearable, I walked in, holding the file that revealed Richard's collapsing empire. My presence threw the room into chaos. Emily turned to me, her eyes begging for answers, while Richard's face hardened like stone. He tried to defend himself, promising he could fix everything, that losing him would mean losing the wealth and security she had grown accustomed to. But Emily's voice rose above the storm. "I would rather have nothing than live one more day in your lies." It seemed final, but then came the twist. Richard revealed he had already shifted all his assets into her name. If he went down, so would she. The realization left her breathless. The luxury penthouse, the cars, the accounts, they weren't gifts. They were traps. Richard smirked, certain she wouldn't dare expose him now. But Emily surprised us both. Instead of fear, a strange calm spread across her face. She picked up the phone, dialed a number, and said clearly, "I'd like to report financial fraud." Her voice didn't shake. Richard froze, realizing too late that the woman he thought he controlled had found the strength to end his game. Yet the question still lingered, had Emily truly freed herself, or had she just stepped into a battle far greater than either of us could imagine? Emily stood frozen for a moment after making the call, her voice echoing in the silence of the penthouse. Richard's confident smirk had completely vanished, replaced by disbelief and quiet rage. The life he had built with secrets and control was crumbling right before his eyes, and for once, there was nothing he could say to stop it. I watched Emily with admiration and a hint of fear, realizing she had just crossed a line that would change everything for all of us. Within days, investigators arrived. The penthouse that once radiated luxury now felt like a stage for betrayal and exposure. Files were seized, accounts frozen, and Richard was forced to face the reality he had avoided for too long. Emily, though shaken, carried herself with a dignity that surprised everyone. She wasn't just the woman who had discovered her husband's lies, she had become someone who refused to be silenced or used ever again. As the chaos settled, Emily and I found moments to talk. She admitted that part of her still ached, not only from the betrayal but from realizing that the life she thought was built on love had been nothing more than a carefully woven illusion. Yet in her pain, she discovered something stronger, independence. She wasn't clinging to wealth or romance anymore, she was clinging to truth. And that truth was setting her free. Richard's downfall was loud, but Emily's healing was quiet. She moved into a smaller home, away from the towering glass walls and endless city lights. Instead of luxury cars and designer gowns, she filled her days with moments that felt real, coffee in the morning sun, long walks in the park, dinners shared with people she could trust. Slowly, she started to rebuild her sense of self, one honest step at a time. But the story didn't end with her leaving Richard. It ended with her choosing herself. She knew people would talk, that society might view her as the woman who lost everything. But in her heart, she knew she had gained something far more valuable than money or status. She had gained her voice back. To you, the audience, I leave this question: if you were in Emily's place, would you have had the courage to risk it all for the truth? Or would the temptation of wealth and security keep you trapped in a life built on lies? Share your thoughts in the comments, because these choices aren't just part of stories, they reflect the struggles many face in real relationships. And as Emily closed that chapter of her life, one thing became clear: love and trust are priceless, and once broken, they can't be bought back with wealth. That is the real lesson her story leaves behind.